It is 9:05, and welcome to the first Playful Creative pop-up event. This is me, David Chislett, Creativity Activator, and over there is my co-host and co-founder, Alia.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you.
It's great to have you all here this evening. Apologies again for the slight technical hiccups. Our guest speaker is Peter Griffiths, who's also logged on. Peter, have you been able to unmute yourself there? Yes, you have.
Yeah, I'm muted. Hi, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Peter. And so I'm going to be doing most of the talking because Peter's kind of brought into the fold through my network. Alia will be managing the chat, but she'll be butting in here and there when she hears interesting stuff. So because it's the Playful Creative Summit, we're going to be doing a couple of unusual things. And one of those is that for the beginning part of the questions, I have over here the bowl of doom, where I have a number of random questions on folded up pieces of paper that I'll be using to start off the interview with Peter. So sorry, Peter, I have no idea what's going to come out of the bowl of doom once we get started.
No pressure.
And then if everybody could man their keyboards and open up your chat window on Zoom as well, I thought we'd start off by just checking in with everybody to find out where you all are and what it's like. So if you could just quickly type into the chat where you are and sorry, not where you are, what time is it where you are, and what's the weather like right now?
What time?
Dark and quiet, 9 p.m. 6 a.m. Who's logging in from Australia? Are you mad? Wow, okay, that's moving super fast.
Yeah, it's so cool. So many people from so many different places. I love this.
Yeah, very cool. So welcome to everybody again. It seems that even for the Australians, it's dark. So we're very excited to have Peter back because he was one of the most watched speakers from the summit, which we held this year in April. And Peter's an ex-DJ and producer turned business consultant and coach. And, you know, it's his unique mix of experiences that give him an incredible playful and creative view on the world. So that's why we've got Peter with here tonight. And as I mentioned, of course, we're going to start off with the bowl of doom. So let's see what the first question is. Kind of got a bit of a mix of seriously serious ones and somewhat less serious ones. So here's question number one. Peter. Oh, okay. Well, we got a really serious one first up. How do you recommend that people stay creative at a time like this? I mean, what's your sort of maintenance program that you could recommend for people?
Oh, that's a good one. I think with times like this, because everything is really serious and people are freaking out and thinking about the future, is actually do the opposite. Don't take yourself so serious and just get back to that lightfulness and that playful mood that, you know, everyone has access to. And that saves my life because I don't know about you guys, I try not to watch the news or think too far ahead these days. And I try and stay in the moment as much as I can. And actually, I'm really lucky. So the people around me, if I actually get too serious, they give me a slap around the head anyway and say, look, you know. So I'm quite grateful that people around me can bring me back down to earth. And yeah, I don't really take myself too seriously. Although there are times when you do need to be serious, you know. Yeah. But it's those times when you think you need to be serious when you're facing problems or looking for creative solutions. That's the time to be lighthearted, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. No, good. I have to add an extra question in there. So, I mean, why do you say that? I mean, what's happening there?
I can base it on my own experience and the people I work with and my clients as well. I think for example, when I used to make music and my back was against the wall, I felt like I had no time. I was trying to write an EP or an album and I had a tight deadline. When I got serious and I think back, to be fair, my output was terrible. You know, I still got the job done, but when I look back, I just made things really difficult. When I know that it's really difficult sometimes to not overthink and it's hard to relax. But the more I just have nothing on it, of course I've got some kind of rough game plan and I want to make the best possible art or music or whatever project I'm working on. But if I just relax into it, I'm amazed by the results. And this is the same for when I work with a client or people tell me they're not creative. I just get them back to a state that's quite innate that all humans have the capacity for. And that's that lightness and that playfulness. And
Right.
also, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you have a really tight structure and lid around what you're doing, that's kind of what destroyed and stifled my creativity. So I'm more likely, for example, the stuff behind me now, I'm actually building another live show. I've had many years out of the game, but what got me excited again was just that playfulness and the ability to go in there with no tight thing or output. And that's the thing, when you're writing music, if you're already signed to a label or you're already an artist, the very thing that will save you is just not to get so serious. Because if you're already doing it, I'd hazard a guess that you're already good enough to have some kind of output anyway, right? So why would you take it so serious? And this is why I stopped music for a number of years, because it got so boring and it actually got really, dare I say, like a proper day job. And that's when I was like, yeah, I'm going to stop. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see what the bowl of doom has for the next one. By the way, for everyone who's logged in and is watching and listening, if any questions come up for you, please just type them into the chat, and we'll try and get as many in as we can as we go along. So, all right. Question number 2. Oh yeah. Oh right. Sorry. Sorry, Peter. Who's the first person you kissed?
Oh my God. I've kissed a lot of people.
Oh.
I have no idea. I mean, other than your parents, I think it was a
romantic kiss. Come on, let's keep it exciting here.
I think it was someone I kissed on the school playground and ran away from her.
The kiss and run. All right, last question out of the bowl of doom. All right, this looks like a serious one. Yeah, it is. All right, so you just recommended that we don't get serious, so it'll be interesting to see how you respond to this question. What are you seeing out there at the moment? Are people becoming more creative with all the pressure and the things that are going on, or are they just shutting down?
Well, honestly, I don't think COVID's any different from any day for me when I get reflective and I look at people, just in general, humans. It's really not a fixed state. People think it's one way or the other. I think that when things are serious, actually, innately, I think you just go into autopilot. And even though you might not give yourself credit, I'd hazard the guess that we can all think about times when we've just resolved stuff because our back's been against the wall. For me, sometimes being limited and not having too many options can give really good results and yield really good output.
Yeah.
On the other side, I see people also being deeply creative right now because they've had, dare I say, a bit more time to reflect. And the ones that are not going too deep into themselves and getting fearful and thinking too far ahead, I've met many people who've just become deeply creative in their spare time because they're working less in an office. So, for example, a lot of my friends are commuting less these days, and they're either getting playful with their children or spending more time with the family. Or, for example, I know a lot of people have started hobbies in the last 6 months or started projects that they've put off for, a good few years.
All right. Okay, cool. Alia, I suspect you have a question lurking over there. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I was curious if people maybe in the chat could also contribute and tell us from their perspectives what they think has changed or been cool about creativity in the last few months during this time, because I would love to hear. There's lots of people here who have a creative background themselves, so I think it would be super cool, to hear from them.
All right, awesome, cool. So while people are thinking about that and possibly typing in their questions.
Thanks in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a nice one to ask you, Peter, because obviously, I mean, it's really cool that you're sitting there in your studio and a very concrete demonstration of the fact that you're certainly getting a lot more creative. What are your rituals at the moment for keeping yourself going and sharp and actually creating?
Throughout the day, I just check in with myself. And to be fair, even though I'm a coach and I'm always saying this to clients, in the last year or so, I wasn't actually checking in on myself. So throughout the day, I just put markers and milestones just to check in and say, right, what's going on? Why am I thinking like this? If you're having a really bad day, it's really useful because you can just have this internal dialogue where when I was younger, people used to say, you shouldn't talk to yourself. Are you crazy? But I would say that's the best thing the best gift you could give yourself. So throughout the day, I really just check in with myself and have that internal dialogue and just make sure it's heading in the direction I want it to. If I approach a project and I need to get deeply creative in a short space of time, then I just change my environment. So if I've been working with a client, but then I've got, say, 3 hours to be in the studio and write some music, then I just completely go out, go for a quick walk, change the complete setting, and then go back in fresh. It's almost like a reset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. I see a couple of people have mentioned boredom already in the chat, which is pretty interesting because I mean I read something recently where someone basically said, "Want to be more creative? Make sure you got time to get bored." What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a great one. I used to get bored a lot. I still get bored every day at certain points. And I think that's a kind of hazard of being a deeply creative person that sometimes things can get, you know, I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but there's lots of things I do get bored with. And if I'm honest, I'm okay with that. I check in with myself. If I catch myself doing it, it can be a deeply creative thing. It can actually be used as a tool as well.
Yeah, right. So, if you reflect on what's happened so far in 2020, what would you say that you've learned?
About this year,
Well,
I
about
would
yourself, about your practice. What has this year taught you?
to be less serious, like we started off, because I was building, well, I am not was building a business with my wife and business partner. And it got a bit too business, dare I say. And actually, that's when it become less fun and the wheels came off. So we just anchored ourselves in spending a lot more time in a more playful mood and a more creative setting. And that might sound counterintuitive. If you own a business, there are shitty things you have to do, like do your taxes and admin and sales, marketing, all this other stuff.
Yeah,
But when we put the brakes on this year, because we were lucky we had a bit of time with COVID happening and not being able to travel, we just started getting a bit more creative and started to flex our creative muscles around what we could do in the business. How could we go deeper with our clients? What could we do that excites us? Planning for the next year ahead. And also, this got us working on Zoom more. I mean, we were lucky we were doing that already, but it just allowed us to get a little bit more playful. And that actually came into our work. I think if you ask our clients or if you speak to anyone that's come to the summits when we've been speaking, there's been a lot more lightness. And again, I can feel that in those things I do because I'm working with a coach myself and I'm a lot less rigid around the way I'm working.
all right. So I guess when we were setting this up, we asked you for a sort of theme that we could try and anchor this discussion around. Clearly seeing how well that's working, and your response was, "Think you're creative? Think again." Um, why? What do you mean?
Well, I don't know about you, but I used to think I wasn't creative at certain points. And that's a really funny thing because, I got signed to a label, I was DJ, I was touring. But then when I thought that I had to be creative, I thought that it was switched off. I couldn't be creative. And it felt like it was a massive weight, loads of bricks on my back, and there was a lot of pressure, and it just felt wrong. But it's all just made up. And also, people who are not artists or maybe are too scared to try doing something that's more creative tell me that they're not, they haven't got a creative bone in their body. But after spending 5 or 10 minutes with every human I've ever met, every human I've met is deeply creative, because that's what we've evolved for. It's in our DNA. As soon as we created language, we started to get creative, and that's never going to go away. I think as soon as we're born,
Sorry, that
we
was
pop
a
out.
that was a really neat paradox you just said. As soon as we created language, then we started getting creative. Sorry. Okay. I just want to pick up on one of the questions that came through the chat, which I also find is quite an interesting one to maybe chew on. Is how do you define boredom? Like, when are you bored? What does that actually mean?
It can mean many things. Just zoning out. For me, you could class it as a mind state. It's when you start to wander. So for me, you could apply any boring thing and get deeply creative. I'm not a big fan of washing the dishes. I'm lucky you've got a dishwasher, but sometimes you have to do it. But when I do it, actually, you end up zoning out and you end up getting creative and your mind wanders. For me, it could be just looking at the wall. Could be taking a time out and just getting curious, but with nothing on it. Not having a game plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the game plan for making sure you can get bored every day?
I don't know. I don't think I have one as such, because you will get bored. Like I say, it's an automatic thing. Our minds are built for that, and they're built for the opposite, to be able to use that for the better. Use that in a positive way. Again, it's just a fixed way that we think, and it's a fallacy. It's dogma. We don't have a fixed way of thinking, but sometimes we put ourselves in a cul-de-sac and think that we are one way or another.
Yeah.
And that goes back to this whole thing. Do you think you're creative? Well, yes. It's the right answer.
Well, I mean, I've been reading a lot over the last couple of years of people saying that, in our kind of always on 24/7 kind of way of looking at the world now, the moment you start feeling a little bit bored, you pick up your phone, you check your social media profile, you consume something, you immediately stuff that hole with something. So is the question then, do we need to be modifying our behavior and stop compulsively doing in order to get bored enough to be creative?
I'm not one for giving advice, really. I mean, nowadays with digitization and the way technology is, it's a total enabler in the right hands, in the right state of mind. Or even me, I'm guilty of it. My wife will catch me just mindlessly wandering. In that sense, it's not the best, right? And you can waste time. Dare I say, I've done it as well. But this is the thing. I mean, it's just catching yourself doing it and not bashing yourself as well. Because I think the problem is when people catch themselves overindulging and it feels like a waste of time, you can then use that as an excuse not for taking action as well. And we all do it. I've done it as well. And that's it. I'm just more curious these days. So if I catch myself drifting away, I'm like, okay, is that going to be useful, or do I just need to stop it? But in the past, I used to bash myself for it and feel really guilty. And that guilt and that fear that brews up actually stifles creativity, if that makes sense. So it's just been okay, because you're a human being, right? You're not an algorithm.
Right.
And with the overabundance of technology that bombards us every second of the day, you are going to get caught out from time to time, and it's okay.
Right. One of the questions that I really wanted to ask you, and of course, it's because you used to be a DJ and made dance music and stuff. It's got to be asked, right? How important are drugs in being creative?
That's a great question. I used to think it was really important in my younger days, but honestly, that's BS. I think that there's much dogma around it, and David and I have talked about this a lot. There's lots of things you can do in a safe way, psychedelics and stuff like that. There's a lot of amazing research, and dare I say I did that in the past. But if I'm totally honest now, and it's not to do with age, it doesn't make sense for me to do something like that, because I can get in that state of mind, and every human I've ever met can do the same. I think a lot of creatives, and me included, used to think that, I have to have a bad background and have to have some angst going on before I can have some amazing output. But that's utter rubbish, honestly. I really think that state of mind that everyone's looking for to get deeply creative, there's no off switch. It really is just there for you when you don't get in the way of it by overthinking. And drugs, dare I say, can, for some people, it can really help them. But for me, it just doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah.
So you've pulled off quite a remarkable segue from that sort of world to helping people in leadership roles, in business roles, around creativity. So now, obviously, a lot of the examples that we tend to talk about tend to be art related, but of course, when you're talking to business people, that's got nothing to do with it. So what are you telling them about creativity and how they can enhance theirs?
You know what? Honestly, I don't see any difference between the business world and going out and smashing the crowd at the festival. I know that sounds really bizarre because, yeah, there's more times I'd rather be in a festival with a crowd or performing, but I really applied the same mindset and the same state of mind as I did when I was DJing or performing. And I'll give you an example. So I spoke to a leader quite recently about creativity because it seems like a lot of people are a little bit uncomfortable in the a certain setting with leaders, but that was where the juice was for me. Not to say that it had some friction as well, because some people are uncomfortable with how deeply creative I was using that in meetings and in certain contexts. But honestly, for me, leadership is a deeply creative endeavor. It's a deeply creative role. Yes, they are complete polar opposites for certain obvious reasons. But to be a great leader, and I can think of many examples, all the best leaders are deeply creative. They apply that creativity. They create the right conditions for the people that's in their duty of care to
right now, but
also get creative.
What are those conditions? I mean, how can you manipulate that?
So, well, the first step for me, and I've been talking a lot about this recently, is to make people feel safe, included, really hone your listening skills. For me, it took years, if I'm honest. And even though I'm an audio engineer, so sound design, I'm meant to understand sound at a granular, finite level. But what I realized until I did more work on myself and did, a lot more exploratory work in psychology, I realized that I wasn't actually listening. I was trying to be a smart all the time and listening, already having a reply. So one great tip is if you want to be great as a people manager, as a leader, hone those skills of just listening with nothing on your mind. And you'll be amazed at what happens in meetings. It's a completely different way of working. So going back to your question, it's just to deeply listen, create and hold a space. So be a good facilitator with the people that are in your team or your function, or even if you're a CEO, the whole company, and really just create the right conditions. And I'm not talking about giving it lip service. I'm really saying own it, make people feel safe to be able to make mistakes and feel like they're included in everything that goes on. And I know there are limitations because everyone has a certain responsibility in KPIs and there's all of this stuff. But I honestly can tell you that if you do that and listen to people at all different levels in the company, you will have a lot easier ride and you'll get better results from people versus the old dogma of, micromanaging and telling people what to do. And again, dare I say, not listening to people.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So for everybody listening, if you've got a specific question you'd like to ask Peter, can you use the reactions button on your Zoom console there to wave your hand? And then I will unmute you so that you can actually ask Peter a question. If anyone's got anything they particularly want to ask him right now. No, we're all being a little bit shy. I don't see any wavy hands. Or do you not know how to use the wavy hands? If you don't know how to use the wavy hand, which I only learned how to do today, I must admit, you can say, yes, me, in the chat, and then I will unmute you. No? There we are, all being very shy. All right. Well, then, I shall carry on grilling you then, Peter. That's no problem at all. Oh, there we go. Beatrice is waving her hand. There we go. Yay, Beatrice. You go. Let me just find you on the list so I can unmute you. Well, let me get rid of the chat. That'll make it a lot easier to see you. Beatrice, there you go.
Okay, I don't know if I was waving my hand, but I was just wondering like how you can be creative, like on the spot. Like if right now I don't know, three of us give you like 3 different notes, how can you playfully be creative about it? Like my note is, da. Bradley, what's yours?
Bradley's muted. He can't tell you. Hang on a second. There we go. We'll unmute him. What's your note, Bradley? You've got to, I'm sending you a request to unmute. You've got to press that button first.
Okay.
Yeah, you're live.
What's my note?
I was just suggesting, I don't know, giving 3 notes to Peter and seeing like, instead of talking about it, like making it happen right now, how can you be playfully creative about it? So mine was da.
You can go higher or lower, Bradley.
No.
D.
Ah.
Well, I'm not a good singer, that's for sure. I mean, we can start recording stuff and throw all the gear on if you want.
No, but it's an interesting question, Peter. I mean, you know, if you have a specific prompt and you've got very little time, and it's serious, but you've got to create, you've got to be able to play. How do you pull off that trick?
Well, you just have to accept the offer and just go for it. And sometimes, if I'm honest, it can be a disaster. I can figure many times live in a performance set where it went wrong. But actually, that's where the juice is. So at the time, you feel terrible and it really, dare I say, embarrassed. I'll give you one example. I was doing a showcase for biggest labels in the world back in Newcastle, and I thought I'd ruin my life by accepting this, and we really messed up. So what happened is we accepted to do the gig, right? And one of the band members was off the Richter scale in a mess, drinking drugs. And this was one of the best gigs we went to do in our life, right? And we had to go without the sound check and play in front of all the people I respect in the industry, like BBC, everyone's there. And we completely fucked it up, like really, really messed it up. And to the point where I was killing people in the dressing room afterwards. But what I found out is that just because we owned it and just went ahead anyway, even though I knew it was, you know, there's nothing I could do, I had to go in. I learned a hell of a lot about myself, that you're always going to get a creative answer. Even if you mess it up, I don't see any failure as being a problem, if that makes sense. Although when you go through it, it can feel absolutely horrible. And, you know, it took me a few months after that. But if I'm honest, after that, I moved away. I left the UK and moved to the Middle East. And then 2 years later, I was playing headlining festivals like Creamfields again. So this is the thing, you can make massive mistakes in everything you do. But the cool thing is, do people really care? I think that's the question I should ask you all, because in that moment, yeah, people must have laughed and I could see the director of the venue shaking her head, right? But I can honestly say to you, it's very momentary. And in a world where everything lasts 5 minutes, this is a good tip. Don't worry about messing stuff up at a granular level and really making mistakes, because honestly, after 5 minutes and you're feeling uncomfortable, you're back in the room again. No one actually cares.
Okay. Yeah. I think that kind of describes every live show I ever played. Never used to rehearse enough, and was never particularly technically brilliant to start off with, so it often went pear-shaped. Peter, I think, you know, to kind of wrap this conversation up a bit, I think I would like to sort of look to the future and say to you, you know, given what's going on in the world, given the fact that I think suddenly a lot more people are thinking or realizing that, wow, we need to come up with new solutions and new answers to the challenges in front of us. What for you are the 3 most important things that not just leaders, but everybody can do with regards to utilizing creativity to better the situation?
Well, I think the first question you asked me, just don't take yourself so seriously. And I know that sounds really tricky in a world where everyone's freaking out right now about the future, but can I be honest? I mean, if it's not COVID, it'll be something else. there'll be a natural disaster, climate change is coming. You can spin out and go completely crazy. But at hazard a guess that where all of the best results can be and all of the world problems will be resolved is where people just get present. So that first one, get playful, don't take yourself too seriously. That's number one. Second one is, if you think that you can't resolve something, then that's a great starting point. I can honestly say this. If I get really frustrated in the setting of, if I'm in a studio and working in a project and I hit a brick wall, that's when you're just on the cusp of greatness. Just stop doing it. Have a wander around, change your environment, go and speak to someone you like, exercise, whatever it is you like to do to just change the setting. And I'll guarantee you'll always get the answer at another point. It's kind of annoying because you can't always guarantee when that will be. But in the context of, for example, me being in a professional music setting, I just didn't get in the way of the already natural thing that's always going to work. Like I say, it's always on in the background if you're not overthinking about it.
Right.
And then lastly, just don't think too far ahead. Just try and stay in the moment as much as you can.
Right.
Because honestly, that is another amazing thing, that if you want to be deeply creative, just take the first step. You don't have to think about 2 days, a week, a year ahead. Just use what you got and take that first step, and the other steps will reveal themselves.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Peter. And thanks so much for joining us again and taking time out of your schedule to come and chat with us, the Playful Creative Summit crew, once more. Alia, you've got a trick up your sleeve still.
I do? Oh, yeah. So I don't know if all of you saw the email that said if you showed up live, you would be entered to win our all access playground pass for this year's Playful Creative Summit, which happened in April 1st through the 5th of 2020. And so I've put all of your names in a name picker generator. And drum roll, please. The winner of the free pass is Bradley. Congratulations. You are the winner. Yay. So I will send you the information on how to log on, and you'll have access to 45 awesome speakers who we talked to this year. From all kinds of fields, including makers, designers, artists, game designers, gamification experts, and play experts. So you'll get to enjoy that until April 5th of 2021. Yeah, and then I guess we have a few announcements before we close. Our next speaker will be on November 4th, and that is Dave Phelan, who's a photographer. So I hope that you can join us for that.
And Dave, sorry to butt in, is the
it.
photographer who provided us with the crazy ass fruit themed photographs for the Playful Creative Summit this year. So yeah, he's he's a lot of fun. Carry on, Alia.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, and then I think if you're interested, David and I have a couple of fun things happening. I have a free webinar on gamifying your online course, which is happening on the 15th. So I'll just drop that in the chat in case any of you are interested in joining us for that. That's also free and available. And then David has these fun unstucking calls, which you can book with him too. What else? Oh, and of course, if you want, you might have not won a pass, but if you want to get a pass, because you're part of this pop-up, you get a 33 euro discount, and you can buy the pass with a discount and also access the 45 speakers from this year. I'll put that in the chat too. What else? Unsticking calls, exactly. Unsticking calls. Yeah, anything else do you want to say, David, or that we want Peter to share?
No, I think I've spoken more than enough. Peter, any last words?
I'm good. Just thank you for joining, everyone. It's been cool.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks very much, everybody. Obviously, seeing as you took the effort and time to register and attend this time, you will hear from us again with regards to exactly the details with Dave. And yeah, it'll be the first Wednesday of every month until the summit takes place in April next year. So looking forward to seeing some of you, or hopefully all of you again. Have a good week. And until next time, keep it
Yep.
playful.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.